Hi everyone, welcome back to Law School Gems with Bria. My name is Bria Riley, and today we are going to be getting into part 2 of transfer applications. For those of you law students out there who are wondering, what does it take to transfer to another law school and what materials will I need? Be sure to check out part 1 of this video about transfer applications because I went into what a transfer application is and the cover letter and the resume. Today we are going to be getting into personal statements, letters of recommendation, transcripts, and so on and so forth to close out the candidacy materials necessary for a transfer application. And next week, we will be getting into transfer applications part 3, where we talk about the pros and cons of when to transfer, where to transfer, and why as a law student. Those of you who are returning to Law School Gems, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you're here today. If you are new to the channel, welcome.
We are born to win. Come and learn the basics with Law School Gems.
So let's dive right on in. And the first topic for transfer applications part 2 that we're going to be talking about is your personal statement. Now, what is a personal statement? A lot of transfer review boards will require that you write one. It's similar to what you wrote to get into the first law school that you are now currently admitted in, right? And you want to make sure that you are following the prompt or the written instructions provided by the transfer review board before you dive into your personal statement. Also, make sure that you follow the writing tips, whether it be for legal writing or whether it be the ones that we talked about in part 1 of transfer applications. Make sure you are employing those writing tips and strategies for your personal statement as well, so that way you put your best foot forward and you make a solid impression for the transfer review board. And like I said before, also make sure that you are following the written instructions from the transfer review board and crafting your personal statement. And those may include the length of the personal statement and how many pages they want you to be, the margins, the font size, the formatting, the editing, the organizing, the word count, the rubric. You want to make sure you satisfy all of that because you want to make sure that you can show the transfer review board that you know how to follow instructions. Also ensure that your personal statement has a header that matches or is consistent with your cover letter and your resume, because we're all about formality and decorum over here, honey. And they'll be more organized, and the transfer review board really appreciates that. Now, next up is the writing sample. This is a sample of your legal writing pulled from one of the courses that you've taken throughout your law school career that is your best legal writing that you have. I mean, it is the shining beacon. It is the golden ticket, so to speak. And again, you're always concerned with putting your best foot forward and making a good first impression, especially if you're a transfer student, because you want to show the transfer review board that you are deserving of getting transfer admission into their law school. And what better way to do that than showing them that you are a phenomenal legal writer? It's very important to remember that the writing sample should not be more than 5 pages long. Even if your actual legal writing assignment or whatever response you crafted is way longer than that, you want to choose a section, right? Like a snapshot from your legal writing that you think is the best in terms of intricacy. Like the issue was really meaty, it required a lot of substance, and you had to put a lot of analytical thought and processes and skills and really showcase how you IRAC, how you CREAC, how you CRAC. And you did that for that particular issue, and you put that in your legal writing, and now it's being used as a snapshot for your writing sample. That is what you want, because that is what the review board is looking for and determining if you are already a trained legal scholar and legal writer. Now, because your writing sample will only be a snippet or a screenshot of the overall writing that you originally had or that you wrote that may be a little longer, right? You're going to have to introduce the writing sample. So you're going to want to explore what the issues were, why you wrote it, what the result was, what class you wrote it for, and basically make a cover letter for your writing sample, introducing the writing sample to the transfer review board so they kind of understand and have some background and context and clarity as to what this writing sample is about. Specifically, if you had to take a small portion from something that was a much larger assignment, they're not going to have the backstory. So the transfer review board, you have to break it down for them as if they are a completely novel audience, right? They're not your professor. They don't know what the assignment was. And you have to explain that to them so they can have some context when they're reviewing your writing sample to determine if if you did a good job as a legal writer. I'll also drop an example down below of how you might start your cover letter in order to introduce the excerpt or the writing sample that you were going to put forward for the transfer review board. Most transfer law schools, especially their review boards, will require that you also submit a transcript as well. Now, for some of you, you may have an incomplete transcript. Let's say you're in your first semester right now, and the deadline to apply to transfer to another law school to be in their second semester 1L class is rapidly approaching, but you don't have grades yet from your 1L semester, but you have to meet the deadline. So what you would do is submit all of your candidacy materials, call them up, the transfer school in which you are applying, and let them know that your transcript is on the way, but that you have to get through finals first, and then you have to have your grades released, and then you will send a transcript as an updated copy or addition to your already existing transfer or candidacy materials. Now say that you were in your second semester of your first year of law school, and you've already completed one whole year, so you have one set of grades from the first semester of law school, and you're waiting on your second semester grades. You can still submit your transcript, but you'll want to wait until you have the second semester grades. Don't send an incomplete transcript, and don't just not send a transcript at all, especially if that's one of the required materials. You'll just have to let them know that, hey, I'll send this once I get it, even though it might be after the transfer deadline. And that's okay. They understand that, and most law schools are very forgiving about that. And as long as you get all of your other candidacy materials in by the deadline, you should be good to go. Now, your transcripts, some transfer law schools may also request that you submit the ones from your undergraduate institution as well, or from any previous schools that you attended, especially if you were transferring throughout undergrad. I know some people started at community college and then they went to a four-year institution before finally graduating. So your transfer law school may want to see all those transcripts. Just make sure that you read the fine print and that you know what they're looking for when you're submitting your transcripts as a part of your overall transfer candidacy material package or application. Now let's talk about letters of recommendation. Some transfer law schools also will require that you submit at least 3 letters of recommendation. Now, who should you get these letters from, right? Because it can be very tricky if you're going to your professors and you're alerting them that, hey, you're thinking about transferring. You don't want to receive backlash. So you want to make sure that you're using your gift of discernment and that you are going to recommenders that are going to keep your transfer process in confidence. And that is going to be a safe space for you, like we talked about in previous videos, and make sure that they are not going to give you backlash for transferring. Or you could go to a mentor or a sponsor, especially if they are a lawyer or a judge or a dean or someone that is in academia who could speak to your accolades and whose recommendation will hold enough weight and power to really sway a transfer review board on your behalf. Because you want someone with clout, for lack of a better word, but you also want people that are going to be safe spaces and that are going to treat this process for you in private the way that you would want it until you determine if you're going to transfer, or until the transfer review board of the law school in which you are applying accepts you. You also might be able to get a letter of recommendation from a previous employer, specifically if you're a student that has an educational gap and you've worked before and you had a long tenure of like good employment with a previous employer and you still have good standing there. That would show excellent credentials and credibility, and that you are a well-rounded, holistic candidate for a transfer applicant. And it's going to help boost up your credibility and help you get further into the door of the new law school in which you are applying. But you want to make sure that you are submitting only the required number of letters of recommendation. So if your transfer law school says we only want 2 or we want 3 tops, that doesn't mean submit 4, right? Like that means that you have to follow the instructions and show them that you know how to do that. Make sure that you ask for your letters of recommendation way ahead of the deadline for a transfer application, because it's going to take people time to write them because they have busy schedules as well, especially if they have clout, honey, and they are somebody important and they are writing you this letter of recommendation. You want to make sure you're giving people ample time to get you the letter of recommendation. So that would be probably one of the first places I started if I knew that I wanted to be a transfer applicant and that I was applying to a deadline. I would look up the deadlines in advance, see how much time I have, immediately start gathering my recommenders and putting those letters of recommendation together. And then while that path is parallel to what else I'm working on, I would be gathering the other materials that we've already spoken about. And sometimes your recommenders may ask that you write your own letter of recommendation and then send it to them so they can edit it, so so they can revise it, so they can review it, and so they can sign off on it. It doesn't mean that you are writing your own letter of recommendation, but sometimes people need a starting point and where and how to describe you or what you think is important to emphasize in order to boost your chances at getting where you got to go. And that could take you some time as well, specifically when you have all these other things you have to write, like a personal statement, a writing sample, multiple cover letters. You want to make sure you have ample time when it comes to letters of recommendation. So don't forget about that and wait to the last minute and then end up a creek without a paddle. You don't want that to happen either. Finally, with respect to letters of recommendation, if your recommenders will allow you to preview the letter, please do so, because some people won't. And I always thought that was a little weird that they wouldn't let me look at my own letter of recommendation, because you want to know what they're saying about you, especially to see if it's true, to vet it. And if you have an interview and one of your letters of recommendation comes up and what that person wrote about you, you want to know what they said so you can talk about it. So if you have an opportunity to preview your letter of recommendation, be sure to do so before it goes to your transfer law school. If you are submitting your transfer application digitally, right? So you're doing it online, make sure that you combine all of the materials that we've been discussing in part 1 and part 2 of transfer applications together in one single PDF. What that does is eliminate redundancies, it increases efficiency, and it also makes sure that you don't have different candidacy materials spread out all over the board and getting lost, because you don't want materials to get lost, because that could disqualify you from having a complete profile as a transfer candidate, and you don't want that either. It's also important that with respect to timing, right, for your transfer applications, let's just say that you are a first semester law student right now, and you're thinking about transferring to another law school for your second semester of your 1L year. Well, some of those transfer application deadlines will be fastly approaching, like right now, right? And some of the applications will open as early as September of this year, in order to get you into the spring semester for next year as a second semester 1L student for that transfer class of whatever law school you're applying to. So make sure you are paying attention to those deadlines and when those transfer applications open, because you don't want to miss that time period, especially if you know that this is something you might be interested in doing when it comes to transferring to a different law school. The same is true if this is your second semester of your 1L year, right? A lot of times those transfer applications will open up the year or the spring prior to whatever year you're going into that you're applying for that law school. So again, make sure you're submitting a timely transfer application. You don't want to be disqualified because you didn't get your application in by the deadline. And also make sure that you are following instructions. And finally, make sure that you're just showcasing your best self, right? And that you're putting your best foot forward, you're making a solid impression, and that you are showing that transfer review board that you have done your research, you are well versed, and you are the student or the candidate that they should select as a part of their admissions for their transfer class for the upcoming semester or the upcoming year. All right, you guys, so that's all that I have for you with respect to part 2 of transfer applications. I just wanted to affirm you, so lean in, give me a big hug yourself. I know I could use a hug. And remember to be good to yourself, put your best foot forward every day, set tiny micro goals as to not get overwhelmed. And remember, if you're showing up and you're being consistent and you're doing the work and you are putting your best foot forward, then you are already reaching your highest potentials for that day. And that's all that any of us can ask for. And you just continue to take things one day at a time. Be sure to like and share this video with anyone who you know who might be a first semester law student considering law school, or who is further along in their law school journey and is thinking about transferring law schools. This will be sure to help them out. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel because it really helps me to grow it and expand it and reach more audiences like you. But also it alerts you and reminds you of when I post videos here as well. And as always, thank you for watching to the very end, because again, that also helps me expand this channel. And I cannot wait to see you guys back here next time when we discuss part 3 and our final conclusion to transfer applications. Until then, I'll see you guys. Bye.